Hey guys, so today in this video, I'm going to be drawing a picture of Josh Allen in a cell shading comic book style, and I'm going to show you how to make this very same drawing. So first thing I'm going to do is lay out the figure on the page for positioning. And here's the reference image that I was using for this picture of Josh Allen. And I'm basically just getting all the parts in just to make sure that the whole figure fits on the page, just to get the layout right. And then after this, I'll add in some details like numbers, the face mask, other various things on the uniform. And, don't be afraid to erase a lot. It's very easy to get lazy and to just draw something once the first time and just to go, oh, that's where the arm is, that's where I'm going to put it. But, take your time, don't be lazy, make sure that it looks the way you want it to look, and don't be afraid to erase. And yeah, it's more work. It pays off in the end, and you'll be very glad that you did. And if you want to get the final image that I create here on like a t-shirt or a phone case or a poster, just click the link in the description below. And if you buy something there, that really helps support the channel and funds me so I can make more videos like this. And as you can see, I'm having a real tough time with this right arm, this throwing arm. And, part of the reason is I'm drawing it vertically, and the reference image that I'm using is more of a horizontal. And I'm sort of trying to get to this arm to fit on the page, but it really doesn't fit. So eventually, as you can see, I just give up, and I just decided to draw the arm in a completely different position than my reference image. Now, this is something I think is very important when doing art, is, don't be afraid to deviate from your reference image. If your assignment is to draw the reference image perfectly, then so be it, do so. But, for me, I'm just doing these just to make them look cool. So I'm going to deviate from the reference if I think I can improve on the photograph or the reference that I'm using. This is art. Art should look better than reality. Make your drawings look more dynamic. Don't be afraid to make the players look more muscular. Don't be afraid to improve the drawing in any way and make it better than reality. Photography, they're limited to whatever they can capture in real life. But when you're doing drawing, painting, art, things like that, there's really no limit to what you can do. You can draw it however you want. So don't be a prisoner to your reference image. Feel free to draw it however you want. As you can see here, I'm adding in this towel, and that's not in the real image. And I'm drawing it really dynamically, like it's flowing, which is not how it is in real life. There again, I'm just trying to make it more dynamic than it was in real life. And don't be afraid to do that. And you'll be really happy with the results. It'll make it much better than if you're just copying a photo directly. So now I'm going to get into inking this drawing. And the first step to that is basically tracing along all of the pencil lines. And for this, I'm using a Micron pen, which is just a really fine-tipped pen. And the point of this is to basically just kind of have an outline for the pens. You're taking your pencil drawing that oftentimes is very loose, and you're just tightening it up and sort of choosing one specific line to where each thing's going to go, whether it's the face mask bar or the facial features, whatever you're drawing, you're just narrowing it down to one line as opposed to kind of the mess that penciling can be. And definitely a tip for this is to use as few lines as possible. For the most part, these are just reference lines. So you don't want to put too many lines down just in case you make a mistake. And after you erase the pencil lines, maybe it doesn't look like how you thought it did. And so the less lines you put down, the better. You're just kind of, like I said, putting down a reference for the rest of the inking. So as few lines as possible, just in case you make a mistake or you need to change something or tweak something later. And then after that, I'm taking a really thick pen, and I'm basically going to be tracing along the outside of all of the shapes. Or if there's a dramatic emphasis or a lot of depth in between two shapes, then I'll trace that as well. And like I said, this is going to be a cell shading drawing. So that means there's no hatching, there's no cross hatching. So all of the shadows and depth and things like that is going to be created through thick and thin lines. So here you can see after doing the thick lines, I'm using a medium thickness pen to create sort of the medium lines. And like I said, cell shading is all about thick and thin lines to show emphasis and depth. So you want to use a medium. You should really have 3 thicknesses of pens, you know, an extra bold, a medium, and a thin. And here I'm using the medium to sort of differentiate between things where the depth is not too dramatic. So for instance, on the face mask, the depth is not that different from one bar to the next. So I'm using the medium-sized pen there. Also, I've got a really thin pen that I use for details like on the jersey, on the numbers, you know, stripes and stuff on the sleeves, things like that. And then after that, also filling in some of the dark areas, like the shadows and just areas where there's going to be kind of like a real dark spot. I'm just filling those in black. Not too many, but just a few, just to create a few shadows. And then, you know, the rest of the time I'm just kind of tweaking, the thickness of some of the lines. And, you know, this is something you just got to feel it out. Which lines need to be a little bit more thick, which ones need to be more thin. Just adding some details here. And the more you practice this technique, the more you'll get a feel for just which lines you think should be thick. And, you know, the thicker it is, the more emphasis it'll put on a spot, the more it'll separate what you're drawing from maybe the things that are directly next to it or directly behind it. And like I said, that's just something you practice, and, you know, the more you practice it, the more you just get a feel for it. Now that the ink drawing is done, we're ready for the next step, adding color. So now we get to the main part of the video, and that's the cell shading. And basically, cell shading is a style of coloring where you kind of have flat colors. You don't have gradients or colors that mix, and you don't have any kind of hatching or cross hatching. It's just a bunch of flat colors. So the first step that you do here is you draw a flat color of all of your main colors. So the jersey, for instance, here is blue. So I'm coloring in the entire jersey blue. But what I'm using is the lightest color that I'm going to be using. So basically, all the colors are made up of either 2 or 3 different shades of that color. So I'm putting the lightest blue down first. Next, I'm moving on to the lightest red, and I'm going to put a layer of the lightest red down everywhere where there's red, just like the blue. And the reason you put the lightest one down first is because with markers, you can always go darker, but you can't really go lighter. And then same with the skin tone here. I'm putting down the lightest shade of his skin tone on his head and his neck and his hands, you know, anywhere where his skin is exposed. And as you're going, try to make it an even coat so that there's as few streaks as possible. And here is where the real cell shading starts to show. I'm taking a light gray color and I'm coloring in the white areas. And the reason I'm using, basically the light gray is going to act as a shadow for the white areas. So you can see here I'm selectively coloring in the light gray in the areas that are going to be a little bit darker, that I want some shading in. And as you can see, there's no gradients, it's all just harsh lines. But basically, as I'm adding these in here, especially on like the pants, you can see where I'm kind of coloring the whole pants this light gray color. And the purpose of that is just to add some shading, and it kind of creates a really cool effect when it's all said and done, when you see it in totality. And then next, I'm taking my medium blue and I'm coloring in the main areas of all the blue areas. So the lightest blue was my highlight color. This is kind of my base color that I'm coloring in second. And you can see here I'm coloring in the areas that are basically everything except for the highlighted area. And there again, I'm trying to color it in and make it as smooth as possible, make it one even tone. Sometimes it's kind of hard, but that's the goal. And this basically is just to color in the color. And like I said, there's no gradients. You can see there's a harsh contrast where one blue connects to the other, but that's kind of how the effect works. And then same thing with the red, coloring in a darker red value for areas that are not in the highlighted area. And same, like I said, same thing with the skin tone, colored in with a darker skin tone anywhere there's a shadow or it's a little bit darker, you know, to avoid a highlight. And you kind of just do this with all the colors, whether it's the blue, the red, the skin tone, the white and the gray. You just kind of color in the shadows, and the shadows are really harsh, but when it's all said and done, it's very stylized. But you know, I really like this look. I've always been a fan of cell shading ever since I believe it was Marvel vs. Capcom was a video game back in the day that had used cell shading. It was almost out of need because computers couldn't really do gradients back then. They were limited memory, but I just like the way that it looks. I think a lot of times in art, you know, very cool, unique styles are created out of necessity, out of limitations. So you can see here, I'm coming in with a second gray that's a little bit darker, and I'm just shading in the parts that are going to be one shade darker, kind of the extra shadowy areas. It's going to be darker and more shadows than the original light gray area, just to make it have one more layer of depth in these areas is the goal. And then lastly, I'm going to come in with a third blue, the darkest blue, and I'm going to put that in the areas that are really just need even more layers, like the wrinkles, shadows, things like that. You know, by his hand, under his arm, just areas where it just needs one more layer to really make it stand out compared to the medium blue. And then last, I'm gonna do that with the red also. And then after that, we're done. We've got all of our layers down. So here's our final image in cell shading style. Let me know in the comments what you think about this style of drawing, if you like it, if you don't like it, if you prefer gradients or cross hatching, let me know what you think. And definitely subscribe to the channel if you enjoy videos like that. Let me know if there's a certain football player or sports person you want me to draw, and I'll see you in the next video.